keep that in mind. All right, Sam, you're on the clock.
All right, so my topic today is on touch. I think it's something that we have mentioned before.
We have
and
touched.
we have we have all touched. That's true. We all have different ideas on it, and I'm really interested in them. I think it's so funny how nuanced it is. We don't talk about it very much, but it is very important to humans to exist. It has been shown to be healthy to be touched. It's good for your immune system, whether that's a massage or intimacy. And there was a study done on gorillas, and when they were separated, they could interact with each other. But then when there was plexiglass between them, they couldn't touch each other. They became more aggressive. And I've heard that in other countries, people touch more. So Austin, I'm interested in your take on how we differ as Americans with touch, since you've been different places. And Ryan, I'm curious as to why you don't like touch.
Wow. Yeah. The
Your
amount
entire
of times
body.
you said touch has made me uncomfortable.
I'm glad I have touched
I'm
you.
so sad that you didn't say this is about touch football, because I would have been so ready to go. And this is way worse for me. I have not been touched in so long, which is why I'm so goddamn aggressive all of the time. Somebody else start.
Okay, I'll start with like the international implication. In Germany, when you're talking with someone, you are physically very, very close to them, but I would not say that I recall touch being very important to the interaction between at least strangers.
Germans are close talkers. I wouldn't expect that at all.
Oh yeah, personal space is not very
Really?
big with Germans. Yeah, no,
I know that's like they're super distant in like the Nordic countries, but I thought
No, Germany is like very in your face.
Really?
But not as much touch.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
the French, of course, like you do like with the bisou, like the two kisses. And so that is like immediate touch. And that's true in South America as well. Like South America is very touchy in general. So like if you hang out with like Brazilians or people from Argentina or anywhere in South America, really, you can expect that like a hug or like the kiss on the cheek will be very upfront.
I remember my dad telling a story. So my mom is Italian and my dad is American. They were visiting my mom's family in Italy. And so he was phenomenally uncomfortable with how much men were touching him. Not because, I guess, like implied homophobia, but just he's Orion, where he just doesn't like touch in the first place. And so then being embraced by like a whole bunch of people you are just meeting that are guys, he was so culture shocked. And he was like,
Yeah.
for one, how in your face everyone is. And then for two, how much embracing and general like touchiness there is in that entire culture. He was so off put.
So in America, where would you say touch is? Like in general, where would you put physical touch?
I haven't been many other places, but it seems we've at least said that it's always calculated at the very least. Mm-hmm. And I think I would prefer it not to be, as if touch was more of a casual thing. And Ryan would definitely be on the other side.
No. I agree with you. That's my dream that I'm willing. I wish I could achieve that plateau of existence. I cannot. Last night we were out, and the one of the girls that we know, she's very touchy casually. You know what I mean? Hand on the back when she's having a conversation with you. She's leaning on you, and the issue, that the difference for me is that everything I do in a social situation is so calculated. Like I'm never not conscious. I'm very self-conscious of myself at all times. What I'm saying, how I'm positioned in a group. So I can never really do touch that genuine. You know what I mean? Like if I were to touch somebody, there would have to be motive, and then it's already an area I don't really want to be in, because this girl, she can just be like, oh, hey, how's like look at this. And she's leaning on you while she's showing you an app. She doesn't mean anything by it. But I would be like, this lean by this amount of degrees means that this is happening, which is just in a zone I don't even want to get into. So then when other people touch me, I don't know, eventually, you can kind of figure out based on the way somebody acts, but I don't know what their motives are for me at all. And somebody brushes up against my hand and I'm like, okay, are we getting married soon? I cannot tell. So I would prefer just to be in a pod and never touch anybody ever.
Until it is a very definite like certainty of like, this means this.
Yeah, like I got pretty okay being touchy like when I was in a long-term relationship, because I knew like it had been established what touches meant. But
Right.
when I don't know what they mean, I don't want to mess with them.
How do you feel about touch with close dudes?
What kind of touch?
I don't know, a hug.
I don't know. I'm like, what's going on? What are we playing for here?
Okay.
Ryan did give me a super awkward hug one time.
Yeah, I have also
I thought it was
received one
I thought
from
it was a
Ryan O'Quist.
joke.
I try my hardest sometimes.
For me personally, I felt like leaving high school, I was much more in the position where Ryan is, where I was very conscientious about the way that I would touch others and how touch was, like how I received touch. But over time, I've been around so many people where it's so normalized, people from cultural backgrounds where touch doesn't have the same taboo, that I'm now much more used to it. Sometimes like cuddle puddles still kind of, I don't like that as much. Like there are some people who are like, let's just lay all over each other all the time.
What does it all mean?
I'd be so lost.
What is that leg brush in this context?
all the math?
Would you guys say you see much of a place for touch outside of intimacy?
Absolutely. Okay, intimacy, like
Or one partner, I guess. Because you say it's calculated in everything you do. So that is constraint on you in some sense. So outside
do
of
you mean like
one person
monogamous
that
relationships?
yeah,
Okay.
or doesn't have to be monogamous, but
Like I said, I'm not sure if I necessarily understand your question, but it was sort of directed at me. Like it's something that I would like to achieve. And it's not like I'm like, oh, he's like one of you guys is sitting close to me on the couch. I'm like, are we,
What are we?
in a relationship?
should
now?
I put my hand on his shoulder?
Right, like that doesn't happen to me. And like I get more comfortable knowing that other people feel differently about it. So like I think like a good place to get to just for anybody would to be comfortable touching people and not wondering what it means. But that would be essentially taking away like every aspect of what I am. So I don't know if I'm gonna get there anytime
Whoa, I don't know
soon.
if it'd be taken away. You're learning to adapt how you perceive touch.
Right, but then at that point in time, semantics talking about semantics is essentially something I love to do. And once you start taking away touch, you might as well take away verbiage as well.
I don't think that.
Why
like,
not? Why?
I think it's that's a false equivalency.
I disagree. I think it's a spectrum. Why stop caring about
But
one
you,
thing and stop caring
you
about the rest?
understand that you have a very specific opinion on touch that isn't necessarily like a widespread.
Sure, no, and I think my perceptions on like
Yeah, but do you think that you would be happier with being more comfortable with touch?
almost certainly.
So
It's not
why
It's
why
not
are you?
always about that though. That's
But
not
why
what
do you
the
have this
game is.
artificial wall then that says, "Oh, I can't allow this to go down because what will that say about my other convictions?"
Because the other convictions will come down with it.
I
They're all
disagree.
they are all tied
And
together.
what's wrong with that then?
What do you mean? Oh, if they all come down?
Well, no.
That would be essentially
but you're
great.
making an assumption.
No. I would like you to know I am not.
How
This
so?
is quite the tangent that will not be resolved. I'm going to cut you both off.
Oh,
Okay.
that's fine.
Can we agree that we put too much weight on touch? At least thinking about it.
I think it goes by person.
Yeah.
I think it goes by person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I'm huge on touch. I'm even very comfortable with touching my close guy friends. It's like a raw communication of feelings. Sometimes it's really hard to communicate appreciation or like feelings of like love and affection that aren't necessarily sexual. It like also shows closeness, sitting close to like one of your friends on the couch, and like that doesn't feel weird. I have even appreciated in like learning about other cultures. I think in the Middle East, they're very comfortable in some parts of the Middle East. Like close guy friends just will hold hands walking around because it's not an expression of like sexual intimacy. It's just an expression of like appreciation and closeness. And I enjoy that idea. And I think the older I get, the more uncomfortable I get with it just because there is so much that is put on touch.
In terms of constraints, I think that it is kind of essential to what we've placed so far needs to have happen, because like I had one of those teachers that's like an old guy that would like braid girls' hairs in like my high school, and like we need to have, I think, like setting the bar low or setting the bar I guess lower in terms of like not being accepted, like making it lower than it should be is probably for the best. because we can figure out on a person by person basis with people we interact with. But as a whole, I think it's a good idea to set like a bar that makes uncomfortable touches like clearly uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. That's a great point that I had not considered.
I do think that physical touch is something that will keep us human as we go further down the rabbit hole of technology. So I think figuring out a way to strike a balance to where we can teach that touch is okay, and also to teach very clearly that to recognize when touch is not going to be received well. I think it's a tricky tightrope, but I think it's an important conversation.
I definitely think it's tricky. I also think it's unfortunate that our whole reaction to like he's like that guy, like that teacher that would like braid girls' hair and stuff, that doesn't have to be creepy. And he may have intended it like in a creepy way, and that sucks. But it's unfortunate that, especially in a role like being a teacher, you are essentially helping raise children. Like those kids are spending so much time with you that they aren't spending with their parents. And especially like, and the younger people are, the more touch oriented like kids are. And that is such an important part of development that it sucks that a teacher couldn't give a student a hug if they needed it, because maybe they're either not getting it at home or they're just having a hard time. And like setting up implications around that necessarily mean that it's bad, I think is damaging socially. I think that you should be able to express, because like I don't know about you guys, a motherly hug is one of the most comforting things you can receive. One of my professors in college hugged me while I was like in her office crying, and it was just so kind. It was so caring. And I think it would totally suck if she had to, like, if she absolutely had to keep me at arm's length just because it might, endanger either of us.
So that's a great point. But if we're getting it wrong right now, in the sense of not letting, say, a teacher hug a student, then that's bad. But if we got it wrong the other way, then that would be way worse than getting it wrong this way.
Well, yeah, because I think overall touch is a net positive, right? But I think the issue is that in these few cases where there are bad actors, like we have to protect, young people from that. Like we have to protect kids from that. And so it is incredibly tricky because overall I think it is a benefit to everyone. But if we have to protect everyone, then it's something that has to be eliminated. And I also think like the over sexualization in media, especially media kids can get their hands on, like TikTok, for example, right? Like where you have young girls or guys, using sound bites about sex. It's like they understand the bad nature of touch from a very early age, right? They are no longer naive to it. So I think once the glass is broken around it, that's when touch becomes much more complicated for children.
Yeah.
Right? Because touch is synonymous with sex, or sexual implications.
Right. But
it's not until you learn what that is. So that's why I think technology is making the conversation around touch even more complex.
Wow, that's really interesting angle that I hadn't even considered.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to end that and we're going to move on. Yep. All right,
Dang, that's tough. There's so much more to say about that.
I know, that was
It was a
Great
real
question,
touching
Sam.
topic.